it's Holmes from Holmes Storybooks, and I wanted to let you know that Holmes Recommends is going to be known as Holmes Reads going forward. Unfortunately, as much as I look forward to every book I'll pick up, I won't necessarily recommend them all, but I still want to discuss them on my channel. Housekeeping over, let's get back to the books. So I am here today to discuss books around the topic of witchcraft. I've been interested in witchcraft ever since I was a 14-year-old tiny bean, but I was Googling things on terrible GeoCity websites instead of reading. So upon my return to this curious topic, I'm going to read, and I've already had better results than before. The book I read recently and loved was Light Magic for Dark Times, More Than 100 Spells, Rituals, and Practices for Coping in a Crisis by Lisa Marie Basile. These spells, rituals, and practices are pretty secular, as they fall more towards the craft part of witchcraft than the Wicca side, which I appreciated as someone who is an atheist. Many of these spells are slightly more elaborate exercises that I've done in cognitive behavioral therapy, particularly the grounding exercises and gratitude journaling, which gives me a lot of hope. Lisa Marie Basile runs Luna Luna magazine, which is an online witch blog, and overall I found her approach to be fairly affirming, intersectional, and approachable. This is a beautifully published little hardback with lots of illustrations and super simple spells for a beginning practitioner. I highly recommend it, especially if you're wading into the waters of witchcraft like I am. Many of Basile's spells are going into my own spellbook. Some of those are a spell for recharging after doing social justice work, a spell to help combat imposter syndrome, an earthing practice to reduce stress from political chaos, a practice for getting comfortable with a new physical routine, a spell for banishing labels, and on it goes. I gave it 5 stars. This next one is The Witch's Spellbook, Enchantments, Incantations, and Rituals from Around the World by Sarah Bartlett. Again, a beautifully published little hardback with lots of little embossed features. I totally spent 5 minutes trying to remember the word embossed. But anyways, it starts off with the author in the intro like, I broke up with a boyfriend 2 weeks ago, discovered an old witchcraft book in a secondhand shop, saw a spell about gaining an old love back, waited for the full moon, performed it, and then he called me back 2 weeks later, and now we're married. And I was like, okay, good for you. I feel like the author really intended it to be like a wow moment, and instead it was just really a disappointment from there. This one really is true to its title. It is Enchantments, Incantations, and Rituals from Around the World, performed through lots of festivals, celebrations, and specific times of the year. So there's spells from First Nations cultures, Hindu rituals, ancient Welsh spells, anything you can think of. As an ethical witch, I don't want to take rituals or sacred practices from a marginalized culture affected by colonialism. To do so would be to enforce colonialism when I can use things from my own background or make my own spells or practices. This includes where I purchase my herbs, if I grow my own, and where my materials for rituals and practices are sourced. So a lot of these spells, while interesting to learn about, were not relevant to me at all. The only thing I really did like was the length of the spells. Many of these had to be done on a specific day within 3 weeks or 1 month of passive work after that, so that appealed to me. In terms of my own spell writing, it's been really helpful and interesting, but I didn't feel a connection here to a lot of the spells. The love section of the book is predictably heteronormative and not at all my own personal approach. Plus, there's a line about selling ice to an Eskimo, and I was like, wow, this is why we need sensitivity readers. Unfortunately, I don't recommend this book for my own personal practice, but if you think it suits you, go ahead. But for me, back to the library it goes. Thank God for the library, right? I can just send this book back into circulation instead of regretting this purchase. I think I gave this a 3-star review on Goodreads, but it's honestly more like a 2. R.I.P. Witchery, Embrace Your Inner Witch by Juliet Diaz is a book I've been looking forward to ever since I heard about it on a podcast, The Witch Wave. Diaz is an indigenous practitioner and a curandera, but this book is written to suit anyone's practice. I love that because I can directly support a witch from a marginalized community while also staying in my lane and being an ethical witch. This is a beautifully published little book, a little square book with black filigree and beautiful typography, gorgeous title pages, the whole thing. I love that Diaz wrote a book that makes witchcraft so accessible. Again, so many of these rituals and spells that I mentioned in this book rely on meditation, self-care, and visualization. So even if I choose not to follow witchcraft as a path, I will know how to make a bomb-ass self-care bath. As a herbal scientist and the owner of an apothecary, Diaz's book is full of herbal knowledge and correspondences for many rituals. I did find some of the materials inaccessible and sometimes overwhelming, but still overwhelming in a good way. It was great to see just how much Diaz knew, just from the listings of herbs available for any particular spell. One of the chapters of this book talks about being an ethical witch and changing and challenging your language and your biases so that you are not culturally appropriating any practices. Her passion is powerful, her knowledge is extensive, but perhaps most of all, Diaz comes from a place of empowered compassion for the reader and for herself. I want to buy this book and keep it and use it and to make myself a super fancy bath. 5 stars. Next up, The Witch's Cauldron, The Craft, Lore, and Magic of Ritual Vessels by Laura Tempest Zakroff. Zakroff is very prolific and has written many things to do with witchcraft, which is great if I love the book and sad if I don't. So again, it's a beautifully published square book with lots of little illustrations. As someone who is looking to explore kitchen witchery, which is basically just like making food and fancy tea with good vibes, Cauldrons feels like a good place for me to start. The one criticism I see come up a fair bit is that it is very basic, which is okay for me in my practice and my craft right now. I've flipped through it before and I see what people mean. There are a lot of really short chapters, with those chapters broken up into super easy to read paragraphs. So if you're looking for something more detailed, this might not be for you. The next author is also very prolific, and they are Scott Cunningham, specifically Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Wicca in the Kitchen. He has written over 30 books, but I'm particularly interested in kitchen witchery. Again, this branch of witchery is all about cooking and food and fermentation and healing with herbs. And no, I don't believe that herbs will cure a serious illness, but I do believe in coming home after a really difficult workday and eating some chocolate to make myself feel better. Yeah? Yeah. So this book is very comprehensive and goes through the power of food, food in festivals, witchcraft, herbal correspondences, and then breads, grains, desserts, produce, meats, and all of the magical uses for those. This book is from my coven library. Basically, a bunch of witchy friends and I all purchased books together, and so we're able to borrow from the library and share knowledge, which is wonderful. The last one on my to-read pile is Basic Witches, How to Summon Success, Banish Drama, and Raise Hell with Your Coven by J.A. Saxena and Jess Zimmerman. Once again, beautifully published as this little square hardback with lots of witchy illustrations. I'm beginning to see the publishing aesthetic for witchy books. Must be small or square, hardback or paperback. Must have illustrations, filigree, and gorgeous chapter headings. Chapters must have their own title page, are tiny with lots of subheadings. Book covers must be black with gold. Anyways, this witch book focuses more on pop culture, which I still find interesting, but overall it feels more superficial than what I'm really looking for. They focus a lot on appearances, so things like hair, makeup, Netflix binges, all of those things. All of those things are totally fine and a legitimate part of the craft, and I'm hoping I do get something from this book. The illustrations, firstly, are gorgeous, and there does seem to be a wide variety of things in here. I appreciate that it is a really modern witchcraft book with lots of adaptations to make everything more current. And as it is a library book, I can totally borrow it without guilt and simply return it. So that's the beauty of the library for you. What books or topics are you curious about?